All right, we are on air. Today is January 3rd. This is our first design and usability meeting for Backdrop of 2019. So Happy New Year, everyone. We're going to do a quick rundown in today's meeting of the issues that did not make it in on Code Freeze by January 1st and talk about whether they are going to be good candidates for as tasks that we can still get in between now and the 15th, or if they are feature requests and need to be bumped to the 113 milestone, which will go in on May 15th instead of January 15th. So before we get to the product, one issue outstanding for backdropcms.org, the user experience of selecting module themes and layouts. I have a sort of half-baked pull request on my local computer I'm hoping to fix search for, but I've been distracted by Backdrop core stuff. So maybe now that we've moved into the code freeze period, I'll get some more time to work on that. However, if anyone else wants to work on it, I would definitely love help. We're basically messing with search, ranking, ordering based on other things. So if you have experience in that area, I definitely love help with issue number 442 in the backdropcms.org queue. Nate, do you want to talk about the issues, especially the exciting ones that have been merged, or do you want me to roll through the rest of these?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Trying to think of where are we in the agenda?
We are Backdrop the product, UX issues for 112.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Sorry, it's too far down. Yeah, so the modules page, we finally added the ability for tags to being used on the modules page. So now modules and their .info files can also include tags. And tags are kind of like a multi-value categories, basically, where you can enter in more than one tag for a module. And then the way that that's represented in the user interface now is that there is under the little more expansion arrow, which is also now an arrow. We added, quote, cute little arrows to the modules page, where previously it said more and less, like as you got more information for the dependencies, for example. Tags are also shown underneath that more expansion list, which means every module now has a more or less tab, because every single module has a tag associated with it. And that means that up at the top, where there's the filter search, you can now type in something like a tag name, and all of the modules that have the matching tag will show up in the list. Yeah, looks like we're going to get a little demonstration here from Jen.
So yeah, I noticed your camera wasn't working, and I was like, oh, I could do an actual demonstration of it. This is the same modules page we've seen before. There's a little more link for every item with a cute arrow. You click on it and it'll show you the list of tags. You can also search for these tags. So if I wanted to look for everything having to do with site navigation, oh, that didn't work. There we go. It'll show you everything that includes site navigation in the title, in the description, but now also in the tags. So if there are other things that relate to site navigation, you'll be better able to filter this list.
Yeah, and it's a pretty minor thing as far as the functionality on the modules page, but it does enable us also to start using tags on backdropcms.org when projects are submitted or new releases created. The project node on backdropcms.org will start collecting taxonomies tags as new releases are created, so that modules and themes and layouts will be able to categorize themselves. And then in the project browser, when you're looking to install new modules, tags will also be available there. So basically, the UI enhancements are fairly minimal in Backdrop itself, but the system. Let's see. Well, I guess if we're doing little demos, Jen, you want to jump over to the views page? Yeah, and this is a fairly minor update as well, but the way in which this views page is arranged is now slightly different. In particular, the thing that I like the most is that it shows you a list of all displays and then all of the paths associated with all those displays. So previously, it only pulled up the first one. Yeah, the taxonomy term one is a good example how it's got, yeah, okay, actually that's a good one too, feed. How it now shows you all of the individual displays, and it shows you the paths at which those displays make URLs. So slight improvement there, just to increasing the amount of information here on the views listing page. I think those are the only two things that that we've gotten completed before feature freeze. So we can go through the remaining ones and talk about whether or not they are they're feasible.
Do you want me to talk about them, or do you want to talk about them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So this is the ones that were merged. We have issue number 3389, which is showing the old password field on the user account page conditionally. So it'll only show up if you're required to enter the old password. So it's just a minor usability improvement where that field is always there and makes that form feel a little cluttery. It's not always needed. It's not always required. And it's a little confusing to people when they need to fill it out. So this issue, 3389, was one that was created to make the process of entering that new password a little better. So I think it just requires adding like some Ajax to determine, maybe just JavaScript to determine when to show and hide that field. And then I think there might be some Ajax or special validation to try and figure out when it's required or not, because I know States doesn't handle that part. So I don't know how much code change is involved in that, but it's currently labeled as a task. And so I thought that might still be able to make it into 112.
Sorry, I'm looking for the mute. Yeah, so our somewhat subjective policy on completing things is that UX enhancements, string changes, and bug fixes are still allowed within the feature freeze window. And so this should be allowed as long as it doesn't get too complicated. Like if things start looking like they're changing a lot of things or they have the potential for regressions, then we don't allow them. But if it looks minimal and simple, like if it's just a matter of states, for example, then that's acceptable for 112.
Great. So then there are a couple of things that I don't think are going to make it into 112, but it would be good to just confirm. Issue number 495, which was one of my favorites, which was to add a useful dashboard to core. We didn't quite get that done under the wire. It looks like it needs a little tiny bit more revision improvement and probably a handful more testers. And then that one can go into 1.3. So I think that's something that is exciting enough that we should add it to the roadmap so that people know that it's coming. It's the kind of thing we kind of threw in late in the cycle this time, and I think it would be good to get more focus on that earlier, and I think people will be happy to have it. The next one is Save Draft in Core. This is issue 3157. And we had a handful of issues about how to handle the radio buttons versus submit buttons, just to try and make it clear. And all of the issues were rather confusing around which parts of Save Draft were going in and which weren't. And it looks like there's a consensus from all of those issues that everything would just be easiest if we just took what the Save Draft module does, which is a slight change to the
We lost your audio, Jen. Oh, never mind. It's me.
I think it might be our internet. We lost you a couple of times, or at least it ended up with a lag. So apologies to anyone who's trying to watch this now or watch the video later. We have been having some internet issues. We have new internet service coming soon, so hopefully it won't be like this for a while. So save draft in core, there's a great contrib module called save draft. It exists for Drupal, it exists for Backdrop. We want to take that same functionality and put it in core. It'll just clean up the content creation form and make it clear about whether you're creating a draft or a scheduled post or something that'll get published right away. Next issue is sticky submit buttons. This is something we've been talking about for a while, where if you have a really long form, we would take the submit buttons for the form and stick them to the bottom of the browser window. There has been zero feedback on that issue since it didn't make it into the last core milestone 111. And so it seems to me like that is not a high priority for the Backdrop community. And so I have removed the milestone for any upcoming core release. And I think that the only way that would make it into a core release in the future is if there is all of a sudden a bunch of activity around people being really passionate on that feature. It is something people are currently doing in themes, so it's not in any way impossible to do it in contrib. It's just we thought that might be a good feature for everyone, and then there wasn't a lot of consensus on it. So I think removing the milestone is the right thing to do there. Issue number 3193, about taking the modules that are promoted and indicating that they are promoted in the installer. So this would be a slight CSS change to the installer module listing. There's two things that are required to do that. I think the CSS change is something we could probably still get in for 112, but changing the way project browser sends that data to the system to include promoted modules is much trickier, and no one's been working on that yet. No one being like myself, Nate, or Doc Wilmot, people who've been working on it. And so I think that's probably not likely to get into 112. Do you have any thoughts on that, Nate?
Yeah, I don't think it's possible.
Okay. So I think like we aren't really sure how much work is involved, but because we haven't seen anything, I'm not confident in saying that that's possible. If somebody really wanted to make that happen and submitted a code pull request and it was just a CSS change, it's maybe possible. But I think it would be better to put our focus on the stuff that we know that can get in for 112. So
yeah, starting new things that are kind of on the wish list that we don't have any code behind at this point is not a very good use of our time. I don't think it's likely just to cause frustration that people try to complete something within this last 2-week window that hasn't even been started yet. Then the likelihood of it even being acceptable is pretty low.
Okay, so the milestone that was on that one currently was 1.x future. I've officially assigned 113, and hopefully that'll get a little more attention on that issue between now and the next release. Okay, for 112, it looks like, this is for design issues. It looks like the installer design, this is issue 2873, was just some CSS changes that needed to get done. I'm not entirely sure about that. There might also be a change to the table that outputs the information for the installer page. So it's currently marked as a bug fix because the installer doesn't work on mobile. So I would say we would need to see the code for that in order to determine whether it could go in. If it is simple, because it's a bug fix, it can probably get into 112. However, if the code change is complicated and is going to break any other page or has any possible regression, that bug fix might have to wait for 113. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, I think you summarized it well.
Okay.
Like, same thing as the other ones. If it's simple, then it can go in, and if it's not, then it has to wait.
Okay. The next one is removing tabs for the login, register, and password reset pages. This is issue number 3309. This is marked as a task, but the blocker on getting this one done is feedback from people as to whether they think removing those tabs from core would create too big a regression. So some of us see that as rather than an regression improvement, because we don't like those tabs and they shouldn't be there. And so if they're gone, everybody wins. But other people might see the removal of those tabs as a feature loss because maybe they're using some contrib module that required that tab be there in order for it to work properly. So we just need to make sure that the code that's there, it's supposed to take the links and like print them out on the bottom of the form. It would need to account for any link added by a contrib module without that contrib module requiring an API change. So if it's just a normal menu item, we need to find a way to get that to appear where it is. So I don't know if that's possible, but this is it is a sort of a heavy-handed change. And so I think having more people look at that and say, don't do this, it's going to break my stuff, or account for this use case if you're going to do it, is going to be important. And because we only have 2 weeks left, my gut instinct is that that's probably not going to happen, and this is going to get moved to 1.3. But again, it would depend on code required and if there are any objections. What do you think, Nate? Menu link type?
Yeah, I don't know. This one looks like it could have far-reaching implications, I think. Yeah, so I would say I don't think that's feasible. I mean, we don't even know how we would go about implementing it at this point. I mean, we could probably do the really simple things and, use the description on the field or something like that to link over to forgot password, but that has a lot of implications for existing sites.
Yeah, so I think the current proposal was just to take the list that right now is displayed as menu local tasks and render them as like a bullet list bottom of the page. And that was the only thing we thought we could do safely, where all of the things that were local tasks are no longer displayed that way. But it still seems like kind of a hack. So let's say needs more discussion, bump to 113, and we can revisit in a few months. Okay. Last is design and theme the maintenance page. So right now, the maintenance page for Basis is just a white screen that's in the top left-hand corner, some text that says your site's under maintenance or whatever your maintenance message is. In theory, this could be some CSS that like centers that information in a box in the middle of the page, and it could get into 112. It could also be a lot more elaborate. It could involve a template file. It could involve some other stuff that we might want to test for that maybe wouldn't make it into 112. So I would say it depends on how drastic the code is for this change, but a simple change that improves this page can probably still get into 112. It's a usability improvement, user experience improvement, maybe not usability. And I think that it's important, but again, we can't go too far with it because we don't want to make anything break. Okay. Issues that we know aren't going to make it into 113, and I'm not entirely sure about this one, but let's confirm with Nate. Issue number 3209, add predefined color schemes to Basis. This is currently marked as a feature request, and so I think that means it needs to have tests that make sure that the colors change to the colors we're telling it to change. And because those colors haven't yet been finalized, those tests aren't final either, and my guess is that's probably not going to make it into 112. I know it's pretty close. So let's confirm that with me.
I don't think it needs tests, actually, because I think that the setting of colors is already tested, and this is just adding the predefined ones. So it's not actually, we don't need to test that each color scheme results in the output colors, because all the predefined ones do is they just pre-populate the fields with default values.
Does that mean that it can get in between 112?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to change the label on it from feature request to task.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
And leave the milestone for 112.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about, I mean, that was in there. Wasn't that in the list for like bug fix releases? Like we were saying we wanted to do that throughout this entire 1.11 release.
Oh yeah,
right?
it was 1.11.4. Okay, let me add that.
Yeah, exactly. So we can actually put that into any version as soon as it gets done. Doesn't even need to be done by 1.12. It could be 1.12.1.
Okay. Stone is back. All right. So that is it for the design and usability issues for 112 versus 113. I think that's it for today's agenda for this meeting, unless anyone else has anything they want to talk about. Design usability really good.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Two quick questions. One, can you clarify with the tags now for modules? Does that mean module maintainers need to start adding tags to their modules?
Yes, that's an excellent clarification. That pull request did include the addition of a new type of item to put into a .info file where it says tags, and then there's two square brackets open close to indicate that it's an array. And then you can put any number of tags in there. If you want to know what tags are currently used in core, there is a page on backdropcms.org that lists all of the core tags, but you're also welcome to add things that don't exist in core, like commerce, for example, right, is a really common one. So I would say there are a bunch of categories on Drupal.org that I pulled a lot of these base suggestion tags from. I would say look at those for examples. There's probably a lot more there than we actually need, but if you have a module that doesn't fit into any of the tags that we're already using, it's totally fine to add your own. That's what they're there for. And as we find tags becoming standardized on, we'll go ahead and add those to the list on backdropcms.org. So people will say, oh, is it commerce or e-commerce, right? So they can figure out what the official name for that tag is.
Okay. And one other quick question. What was my quick question? These categories for what can get into like after code freeze, is that documented anywhere, or is that just sort of understood because of?
I don't know. It might be on our, we have a page in the handbook that's about semantic versioning.
I can look for it and see if
I think there's a paragraph on there that we added when we put in code freeze. So it's probably in there if it's anywhere.
Okay.
If it's not, we should add it somewhere. If you think there's a better place we should put it, we're also open to feedback on where this information should live. So.
Okay, sounds good. So a last thing, because we didn't have an outreach meeting last time, I can ask this now, or we could finish the call and I could ask you then, but the birthday party thing is in 2 weeks. And we've just got, I think, 2 official announcements yet. And I'm just wondering, like, if we want to make a last minute splurged or, push to try and get more people to do it or not. What the thought is. I'd be willing to put some time into trying to recruit, but I don't want to, like, make a big deal if trying to recruit more people to do parties unless there's, buy-in.
Yeah, I think it would be great if we could put some effort into making parties happen. I think it would be better if we could put effort into the parties that are already happening. So because you're already running a party, it would probably be best for you to focus on getting people in your local area to know about it. Sure. And that's probably what I'm going to focus on doing, is getting everybody that I know that's around here to try and come. But it wouldn't hurt to do a little outreach, at least in Gitter or on the forum or something, just to try and be like, hey, who's here? What are you doing on the 15th? We're going to do this thing. Do you want to do it too? Yes, no. And if, nobody wants to take on the responsibility, that's also fine. And it is, a little extra work. But sure. Yeah, I think it's probably best that the parties that we have scheduled are successful rather than that there being a huge number of them.
Sure.
That's what I would think.
That makes sense. So last thing that we might as well do now, I guess, in terms of outreach, I don't think I heard back from either of you. I did that sort of summary of the meetings last week without making any commitment to do that every week. Is that a good thing to do or not?
I'm not sure I saw that. Where is it?
I created a blog post. I sort of summarized what happened in the meeting last week. It's in the blog. It's the last.
Okay, let me see.
I got feedback from a number of other people that it was a good idea before I published it.
Yeah.
And I hadn't heard from you guys, but Jeff and her, like?
This is fantastic.
Okay.
I didn't see this because I was busy, but I think this is fantastic. I think if you would like to do this every week, or at least whenever it makes sense for you.
Sure. I won't commit to doing it every week, but I want permission to do it every week.
Yes.
If I'm able to.
Permission granted.
Okay.
Also, I would like to say anytime you have a good idea like this, I would like to encourage you to continue to grant you for future permission to do whatever you want, so you don't need to ask. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've been too hesitant to initiate things, but I do like to get some feedback from somebody, whether it's you guys or somebody else. And once 2 or 3 other people had chimed into the idea, then I felt comfortable doing it. But
yeah, this is great. When Wes had more time and was participating in our meetings, he used to do little summaries on the meeting agendas, or these are the things where we need help. And I thought that was really useful, but the only people that ever saw that were people who were in the meetings in the first place. So I think this is even better to take that information and put it in a public place where other people who maybe weren't at the meetings will see it. So fantastic idea. I love it. Anytime you want to do it.
Well, I was particularly motivated with Code Freeze coming up.
Yeah.
I thought it's a great chance to sort of let people know where things are at, but I think it could be a good thing to do any week. So.
Yeah. And I think that it'll also be good this week because we have Code Feature Freeze happen, but now we have this little window where there's a couple extra things we could probably get in. That's another good place to kind of rally some support. And even if these summary issues from the meetings only happened in the 2 meetings, around Code Freeze and Feature Freeze, I still think that's a huge improvement. So don't feel obligated that you have to do it all the time. But yes, thank you for doing it, especially right now. So.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, that's all.
Yay. Anything else from you, Nate, around design usability or anything else we haven't yet talked about today? Nope. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap. We've got 20 minutes until the next meeting. We will rejoin in 20 minutes to talk about all of the other features that did or did not make it into Backdrop CMS version 1.12. And what else we'll be working on for the next week or so. So thanks for joining, thanks for watching now, and thanks to everybody who watches later.
Bye.
Bye.